I think the reason that I disagree with you, Corey, is that I feel like Iowa peaked quite a long time ago in their season. I think that they haven't been playing great football lately in the past month, maybe even more, and probably a month and a half now. So now I think their win on Saturday against Nebraska was a good win. We've talked we joked about it on our last show, Mark, about Nebraska being the most ridiculous football team of all time this year. Like, it's just insanity. But I still think they're a good and talented football team. The reason that I think that Michigan will win this game, though, is that unlike Iowa when they peaked, a month and a half ago, Michigan feels like it's peaking right now. I think they're playing in the best football that they have in probably 5 years at this very moment. And the other thing that I think is that a guy like Aiden Hutchinson is playing for his life right now, essentially. He's playing himself into a Heisman Trophy conversation that nobody in the world was talking about 2 weeks ago, playing for a Big Ten championship that Michigan hasn't had. I mean, if they win this game, they might build a statue of Aiden Hutchinson, honestly. And for him and Jim Harbaugh, we've seen the emotions all year long of them embracing after the Nebraska win, embracing after Penn State, embracing after Ohio State. I think they're on this like different level of the will to win more, and then so there's that on top of just being really talented and having guys play up to the best that they have. I mean, it's kind of funny. You go back and look at the bottom of Michigan's, I believe it was 2018 recruiting class, was Hassan Haskins. Luke Schoonmaker was the tight end. There's a couple of Jake Moody was on there, that kicker that we just talked about getting Big Ten Player of the Year. So that's why I think Michigan's going to win the game. Now, at the same time, I'm not overly confident. I don't think they're going to go out and kick their ass and say, all right, Michigan's going to dominate this game. I would, if I was betting, probably bet the spread. I would take the points because 10.5 or 11 seems like a lot of points for this game. But I still think Michigan's going to tough it out. I think it is, like I said, it's strength on strength. So it's Michigan's rushing offense versus Iowa's rush defense. I think that Michigan has more opportunity on the offensive side of the ball than Iowa does, though, where I think that I think Iowa's really going to struggle to move the ball against Michigan. I don't see them. And so it's going to be Petrus. Is that right? Instead of Padilla?
That's what the depth chart says. That's what Kirk's saying. But believe you me, if he's struggling, I don't care if it's a neutral site game. The crowd is going to be all over Kirk Ferentz, and he'll make that change.
Yeah, and I think that's that's another. You just brought up another point, is the crowd. My brother was actually at the 2015 Big Ten championship game. He said Iowa fans were insane. It was the IOWA around the whole stadium going ballistic. I think I know Iowa fans will be going nuts, but I think Michigan will still have that energy advantage because it's been 5 years for you guys. It's been 15, never to Indy, right, for this game. So I think Michigan fans are going to travel like crazy, as they always do. And so I think if Michigan can get on Petrus or Padilla early, the same way that they did Stroud, then all of a sudden Iowa could be back on their heels and not really be able to move the ball much. And then Michigan will kind of slowly but surely get that offense going and put up some points.
Well, let me just say this, and you alluded to the fact that you thought Iowa's sort of peaked earlier in the season, and I understand why you're saying that. Let's remember, though, that this offense has been bad all year. And you're right, the number of turnovers that Iowa created early was just astronomical. It was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And that hasn't continued and hasn't sustained itself. But Iowa has won 4 straight games. And might I remind you, Justin, 2016, of course, we all remember the infamous Keith Duncan kick on Saturday Night Football on ABC to take down Jim Harbaugh's Wolverines and, of course, Manny Rugumba's improbable interception along the sidelines. Of course, C.J. Beathard was there that year. That was not a good year for Iowa football. There was a lot of hype going into that year. And Mark, losing to North Dakota State at home, that was a real disappointing season. I mean, you can rank that right up there with 2010.
But you know where it was? It was at Kinnick at night.
Well, so that I guess that brings up the question: will there be more Iowa fans in Michigan? I think there'll be more Iowa fans there. I think a lot of Michigan fans were at the big house. That was their investment, buddy boy. That was their investment. I have a hard time. Do we really think that there are going to be? I mean, how many just ridiculously wealthy Michigan fans? I'm sure there's a lot of them, but
a lot.
Okay, but let's think about this. So you're saying, because how much is an average ticket to go to the big house for Ohio? I mean, how much were the tickets on Saturday? This past Saturday.
Face value was like $150, but they were going for $250 to $300.
Okay, so that's actually a little bit less than I anticipated. So tickets now for the Big Ten title game are, I think, over $300. If you're buying now on like StubHub or some other outlet. So I just question whether there'll be more Michigan fans and Iowa fans for two reasons. You brought up Iowa traveling. Of course, they have a history of traveling there. And then the other thing is I think Michigan fans sort of maybe not completely. I'm not saying there's not going to be a lot of fans there, but I just wonder how much last week took a toll on their expense accounts, if you will.
It's funny you say that too, because I was on the phone with my dad about 20 minutes ago, and I'm talking. I go, I've got 2 tickets for you. What do you want to do? Here's the price, blah blah blah. And he's like, "Well, last week was pretty expensive." And my response was, "Dad, we haven't had to pay for this weekend for a decade. I've been saving up. We didn't spend it." So
you're right.
I mean, I hear what you're saying 100%. I don't doubt. It's not that I don't think Iowa's going to travel. That's not the part I'm saying. I think it's more so this has been so long coming for Michigan fans that and the wealthy Michigan fan comment, Mark raised his eyebrows. I'm on the lower end of that. There are plenty of very wealthy.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt about that. And you're right. It's probably one of the wealthier Big Ten fan bases. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes, that would be my guess.
So. Here's the other thing that's a factor here, guys, is all these tickets it was sold out. Wasn't it sold out before the games went final? So, I mean, I think most of these ticket holders were likely – now, some of them were Iowa fans. I know Iowa fans jumped all over the 6-0 start.
Right.
But I wouldn't be surprised a lot of the tickets that were purchased early on were Ohio State and Wisconsin fans. So
that's probably a good call.
So there are probably going to be a lot of tickets purchased by these two fan bases that are much higher than face value, if that makes sense, because they're being bought off StubHub. So that's sort of an interesting storyline. And you're right. There's probably plenty of wealthy Michigan fans to go to both games, but that is an interesting storyline. I will say, going back to 2016 though, that win in Kinnick. Does anybody, and I don't expect you to remember this, Justin, but Mark's the voice of college football, so I'll ask him, do you remember what Iowa's result the week prior to the Michigan win in 2016 was?
The week prior.
I bet you a lot of Iowa fans remember this.
Well, it was a disappointing season. I can't even recollect what they finished that season, but I'm going to guess that it was some kind of disappointing. I know that was a 9-0 Michigan team, 8-0, 9-0, something in that range. So we're talking late October, early November games. So they must have played did they lose to Minnesota?
So it was November 12th. It was preceded by a game at Penn State where Iowa got curb stomped 41-14.
Yeah, okay. I remember that game.
And it was a total just unraveling by Iowa. And to come back the next week and to play that way against Michigan. So that's what gives me this is nothing new to Kirk Ferentz. Like, go back to last year. You have the offseason claims of racial injustice. You have a lawsuit that was brought up against Iowa and against the coaching staff the week of game one. You then go into week one. You lose a game that you basically threw away with penalties and turnovers on the road at Purdue. You then blow a 17-0 lead against Northwestern by throwing the ball 51 times with a quarterback who couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Spencer Petras and lose that game, blow a 17-0 lead against Northwestern, you're 0-2. Some of the fan base is calling for your head. Nobody wants Petras to start. What do? They come back, win 6 straight games. So this is not Kirk Ferentz, and it's a perfect example this year too. I mean, you're 6-0, then you lose 2 straight games where you get blown out. They respond with 4 straight wins. So I don't think Kirk Ferentz's teams, Justin, can be ever discounted or discredited based on recent results. And I'm talking
when they're playing or how they're playing at this
like
exact
a week
time,
or two. Yes. You just never know what's going to happen. That's one of the things you love about Kirk. And I've had my criticisms of Kirk, especially with the offense, but the dude is resilient. All right. And he never seems to lose a football team. I don't know what happened in 2012. It was the one year they went 4-8, right? Since he's turned the program around, they went 4-8 in 18, or excuse me, 12. It was a really bad year as far as injuries. But other than that year, it seems like he always figures out a way to turn it around. Even if it's a down season, they turn it around the next year. It's never this deep fall for Iowa.